Welcome back to Talk Tuah. We're your hosts. I'm Pete.
I'm Cam.
And today we are going to be breaking down the podcast Good Guys, which is typically helmed by Josh Peck and Ben Sofer. But this iteration, which we're companioning, is a must-see podcasting, a two-part podcasting event. Josh Peck is reunited with his former co-star, Drake Bell, for a tell-all kind of episode. They reunite. There's so much on the table. They leave nothing on the table. At least not, even in part one, they cover so many bases. We're only companioning part one this week. Next week, tune in for our companion of their second part of this two-part podcasting event. But yeah, I mean, this was absolutely incredible to see these two co-stars come together over a podcasting table and just spill all the beans.
You know, Drake and Josh was a big part of my childhood. I didn't grow up watching podcasts as much as I wish I did. My parents didn't allow me to watch podcasts.
Really?
But listen, trigger warning for this episode. Drake gets into a lot of his past, working on the show and before that, the Amanda Show, where, you know, obviously he was a victim of sexual assault. And, you know, this podcast, it's all over the place. You know, there's fun moments. You know, they're working out old bits.
Yeah.
And, you know, reuniting with the magic.
Yeah.
But then it gets into some real serious parts that absolutely deserve and command respect. So we're going to be trying to tread as appropriately as we can with everything.
Course. Yeah. And I think this recent documentary that came out last year.
Have you seen it?
I have not. I believe it's called Quiet on Set. I don't even think they mentioned the name in the podcast episode. But they refer to the documentary a couple times, and you know, it came out this last year, and I think it's the impetus for this reunion where Drake has a lot to share. He disclosed a lot of information in this documentary that came out, and now it's like getting to see him rehash some of it with his former co-star. I mean, it's pretty emotional and sensitive, and a tragic story, but to see it all done over a podcast it left me with an overwhelming feeling.
Look, we're going to do the best job we can. We're always trying to improve as a podcast. And, you know, podcasts cover such a wide range of topic. And I don't know if we've done one as serious.
Not yet, at least.
As this. So,
I mean, we've covered financial tips with Dave Ramsey. We've covered, you know, politics with Gavin Newsom.
But we're trying to grow. And we want to be able to cover, ideally, just kind of any podcast. You know, you throw a podcast name into a hat, we're going to pick it out and then talk about it.
Yeah, let's get into it. I mean, we open with this awesome theme song that Josh Peck and Ben Sofer have perfected.
Two Jews, both big and tall, it's a Good Guys. Whoa.
I think Josh wrote a lot of it.
Now, hold on. Let's just set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
Josh Peck, if you don't know him, he was in the movie Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
And then, I guess before that, Drake and Josh.
Yes.
That was a big thing.
Yeah, that was a big moment for him. Before that, even, he was on the Amanda Show for a couple guest appearances.
And then Ben Sofer, his co-host,
is a fan of the Drake and Josh.
Well, we're going to get into that. But, you know, those two guys, really, they have acting experience. And then I guess Ben is bringing
Well, Ben brings plenty of podcasting experience, too, which is just as valuable, if not more so, than acting experience. No rebuttal. I mean, let's move on. So this theme song opens and it is grandiose. I mean, two podcast hosts just duetting on a beautiful jam. It's poppy, it's happy, it puts some hop in your step.
It seems like it was edited on Canva or something. I mean, it was so beautiful.
Yeah, the images and the graphics that go with it looks like they're just shooting hoops in the park. And there's like a bit of like a watercolor kind of effect over their images as they go through. And, you know, the lyrics are in the bottom karaoke style, so you get to sing along at home.
Well, you do not want to catch me at a bar in K-Town singing that, you know, after midnight.
Yeah, you get sloppy.
Oh, I'm going to get crunk with this song.
A couple of rounds of soju in you.
Because the sound bed on this was expertly crafted. I don't know where they recorded this, maybe Sunset Sound or something, but the acoustics were just delightful.
Yeah, and we learned that they may or may not have poached Drake's producer. Someone that Drake has worked with in the music industry.
Super Chris.
Okay.
Produced it.
Wait, really?
Yeah, the great Super Chris Abraham.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Okay, can you play it? Can I hear it?
I don't even know if we have it. Yes, I have it right here.
That's funny that you said Chris did it because... Wait, play it. Because I when I listened to it, I was like, Oh, there's some. Okay.
Josh relied on him to, record this beautiful opening theme song.
Yeah.
And so, Josh was working with a professional. He is a professional himself, but to work with a team of professionals to bring this song to life, I mean, it shows. And so we have this awesome opening, and we then cut to...
And which, again, if you haven't heard it, I think it's probably available on all DSPs, which you could find the song.
And in layman's terms, it's digital streaming platforms.
That's correct. But it looks like the boys are recording somewhere in New York. They have a beautiful studio. They could be anywhere. We don't know their exact location.
Yeah.
They could be anywhere from Dumbo Heights to Midtown to the Upper West Side.
The Coney Island, the M&M store, that really skinny skyscraper that they built recently.
Now, I want to go off on a limb here.
Yeah.
And say the room was cream colored?
Not quite.
Okay, maybe more of a porcelain?
That's not it either.
It was an eggshell, wasn't it?
It was an eggshell white.
And it was beautiful. We start off with Josh's frame.
Yeah.
What did you think?
His frame was beautifully layered. I mean, you see a fake ficus plant behind him. You see his mic stand with a beautiful Good Guys mic flag.
And what looks like a blue band around the XLR.
That's right.
Which actually coincidentally matches the blue band around the Mountain Valley water bottle that he has, the glass sparkling water he has.
Yeah.
That's going to be very important because on Drake's mic stand, the XLR is a red band.
Yeah.
But that matches his water bottle, which is a Mountain Valley, and it is a still.
Yes.
And they're both red, so he's red and Josh is blue.
Yeah, and it's also kind of calls back to the earlier era of their show where I believe they were kind of represented by like green and purple. Like they had arrows in every transition between scenes. And, these arrows represented the two boys. My bad. I'm stumbling over myself. And it would be green and purple. And now it's like maybe they're matured. And Josh is now rocking the blue color wave.
And Drake's representing the red. But to take it back to Josh's frame, what else do we have? I want to make note. There you can see an Ethernet socket and a 2-prong plug socket, which is type A plug. I was doing some research. It looks like a NEMA 1-15. This is just your standard issue. I mean, you could find this pretty much anywhere in the USA.
Yeah, this is critical to understanding the room. But even...
Well, critical in understanding that Josh could charge his phone on a whim anytime he wants.
Yeah.
But Drake's side did not have a charger in sight.
Yeah.
So a little disadvantage there.
Yeah, and we see that Josh actually has his phone out on the table.
The Galaxy.
So wide, yeah. So, I mean, Josh, he has all the amenities, but we're also behind Josh we see a sneak peek into a side room. We have glass separating Josh's set and this side room where you can make out a computer. I mean, you get to see how the sausage is being made in real time. We realize we had a clearer view, and we see that whoever is operating that computer has both camera angles, the multiple camera angles recording the podcast up on the screen, and you can just see that they're hard at work monitoring the episode and probably editing in real time.
I'd like to think they're editing in real time so that they could just, basically start uploading it to YouTube immediately when it's finished. But this could also just be a security guard looking at the safety, security cams.
Certainly possible.
Just making sure everything's safe in the studio lockdown. I only say that because I didn't see a use of a timeline.
Yeah.
Which in standard editing software, you're going to be able to cut it up, add graphics, add inserts, all this stuff. This almost looked like they were just being watched.
Yeah.
By another person where we see their arm at one point.
We make eye contact and I go, "Hey man, nice to meet you." And he goes, "Oh, we've met before, haven't we?" And I go, "No, I'd remember."
Yeah, and then we do see the sidebar that looked almost like a chat menu.
That's right.
So,
and there were 2 names on there, it seemed?
Yeah, it looked like maybe 2 people were in conversation on that. So a lot of questions unanswered, but it was interesting to see that their footage is being monitored. Someone is, overseeing the whole operation, and that's comforting as you're watching the podcast.
But we don't have confirmation on whether or not this was a 2-way mirror. For all we know, we could have seen them. They couldn't see into us, but they could see into the room through the monitor.
Oh, what a compelling point. Are you arguing that the podcast itself is, playing with our sense of space and time and keeping us further invested in the podcast itself?
Maybe, but let's get to Drake's angle.
Yes, please.
We see him arrive in a beautiful suit, kind of a more business casual. I don't know if maybe Josh didn't get the memo. Josh is wearing his stage blacks, a little underdressed for, I feel like, how important of a reunion.
I mean, it was nice to see Drake all gussied up for the big event. I mean, this is a 2-part podcasting event. I don't know if they change wardrobe for the second part either. We'll see that next week. But yeah, Josh and then also Ben did feel a little bit underdressed for the occasion.
Well, Drake's frame felt a little bit underdressed, right? He had a plant in the corner, and then he had, again, I want to say a egg white.
Certainly egg white.
An egg white colored curtain behind him, but there wasn't really too much going on in his frame, and I think that was probably more purposeful given that he had a lot to say on this. And so when you look at this frame, he's obviously going to be the center of attention. We don't need to see so many things. I wonder if Josh was a little worried about, I don't know, maybe he's like, I want this to be more on, Drake.
So I'll dress a little more casually.
Dress a little more casually, kind of give him the spotlight.
Let him peacock a bit.
Yeah, and show off, here's the Ethernet thing. Here's my phone on the table. Here's the screen. Because maybe we get a little bit bored in his frame and we need more of a sandbox to play with and, fill up our imagination.
Yeah, I mean, Josh definitely comes across as a humble podcast host where he doesn't want all the attention on his words this episode. I mean, hell, he's got one incredible back catalog of episodes with Ben.
Yeah.
And so when he has a special visitor on, a longtime friend who he hasn't really been connected with in a long time, I mean, he wants to make sure that Drake feels invited in, totally comfortable to share his story. And I think that's touching.
But then Ben really steals the scene with his frame, don't you think?
It's certainly an eyesore.
Eyesore? I don't even know if he was in the same building as them. He might as well have been zooming in.
That's right. Ben is in front of a weirdly multicolored backdrop of dark grays and light grays, and it's all low resolution. It's
like 140p.
Yeah, it's really similar to, when you're on a Zoom call and someone on the call has their background blurred because they're insecure about their apartment and their Funko Pop collection behind them.
Well, his, also the color is very glaucous. It's like I'm looking at the Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
And here he is seated in this espresso colored button chair that just completely clashes with all the white on set, right?
That's interesting. You took that as an espresso color. I certainly saw more caramel brown, like something like a Werther's Original kind of shade.
Well, I think the biggest thing to note here was his bootleg mic flag.
Yeah.
And mic itself completely. I mean, this was like a hand-me-down microphone. What was that?
It certainly looked outdated. The Good Guys font is famously now this cursive kind of this font, this cursive one. It's way more stylized, way more classed up. I mean, Ben, whatever he was working with was definitely found in some broom closet and they had dusted off, and it seemed like a prototype font for where it said Good Guys. It seemed sloppy.
And then Ben's first impressions, honestly, this was a little brutal. He outs himself pretty quick as a massive Drake and Josh fan. That's and, right. He says, Drake, you are our number one guest to get, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm such a big fan. And
Drake, I'd be remiss not to mention that, like, I grew up as the biggest Drake and Josh fan of all time. Like, this is...
thank you.
You can ask Josh, like... From day one, like, you are circled number one guest.
He lets his freak flag fly.
I can't help but think you've just crushed the power dynamic here. I mean, now Drake is a little in his head about this, star quality, all these memories where it's, you want to come into the podcast as an even playing field.
Of course.
You're welcomed and accepted by your hosts.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a free-flowing conversation. There shouldn't be a strange dynamic. And now Josh is in his head too.
Yeah.
Drake's almost just like, what, do you want an autograph or something? He's probably thinking at the end of this, now I'm going to have to take a picture with this guy, Ben. It's a whole thing.
Yeah, it's like, what, do I have TMZ waiting in the lobby when I go back downstairs?
Do you feel like that's something Ben should have just kept to himself in that moment?
Yeah. Ben definitely slipped up here.
But Drake is a professional.
Well, he was cool as a cucumber, yeah.
He was. I could see him a little rattled, but he's probably been in that situation before.
And thank God. I mean, thank God he handled this as well as he did. And he was ready to answer any of Ben's questions, and Ben only got through like 2 or 3 the entire episode, but this was truly, a platform for Drake to open up about his experiences and for Josh to help him, bring these things to light and add context to their time on the show together.
But ultimately, that's why with Ben, him being a kid in a candy store, is ogling at Drake.
Yeah.
That wasn't the best look.
No, it wasn't.
Maybe it should have just been them in the room.
Yeah. Ben could have recused himself from this episode. I do think that would have been the right move as a podcast host. When you are so heavily biased towards the guest you're having on, it's
the dynamic you're creating, and you don't want that kind of environment. I mean, Ben did serve as an incredible laugh track.
I feel like I'm playing my demo class.
You did, yes. And it recalls kind of the Drake and Josh show dynamic where these two guys would be goofing around, having these funny antics on the show, and there was a live studio laugh track during those episodes. And so I do wonder if Ben was there to help them, revisit these memories and like bring them back to this point in their lives where it's like, hey, look, you were surrounded by a laugh track every time you guys interacted with each other on set. So what if I serve as that in the modern day, in the podcasting era? And so there is, an argument to be made that his presence was helpful in that regard. But
there's a familiarity with Ben.
But hell, anyone could have been a laugh track.
You know what? That's a good point. And also, so Ben said that, not a great first impression. And then he doubles down, because he says he's such a big fan. Drake's like, oh, okay. And then he says, I never realized in the theme song, the lyrics are, it's going to take some time to realign. But Ben was saying, I always thought it was take some time to realize.
Yeah.
I just found out, though, that the words of the song are, it's going to take some time to realign. I always thought it was realized.
So you're saying you're a massive fan, but you don't even know the lyrics.
Yeah, and you couldn't be bothered to do the research.
It was a sloppy look.
Yeah. So
and Josh, for this part, completely staying out of it because his co-host is trying to burn this bridge right now.
Yeah.
It must have been just kind of an embarrassing moment for him, no?
If we were to assign scores for this episode, I mean, Drake and Josh, obviously A+ standout students. Ben, I would say B- territory.
Honestly, I give him a C+. I think
really
he could redeem himself.
I didn't want to be too hard on him.
In part 2, I hope that he's going to take these lessons with him.
Yeah.
Maybe cool off a little bit.
Of course.
Again, he was a little underdressed as well.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I would dip into C+.
Okay.
If he came on wearing like even a feathered hat or something.
Yeah. But if we were gonna dock him points on that, we'd have to dock Josh to an A-.
Josh, but ultimately, you couldn't do it without Josh.
That's true.
So I think his
he
score,
maintains the A+.
It is going to be tethered to Drake's score.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much we could realistically move those. I don't think we have much flexibility.
Yeah, no.
Ben's going to take the hit.
Yeah. Okay.
Right off the bat.
Okay.
And I think he did a great job of letting them talk because really this is about Drake and Josh. I think for the most part he was just kind of doing a laugh track type thing, which did save him. And then again, maybe we could bump him up to a B- only because he did a fantastic job on all the ad reads.
He did.
He was phenomenal.
He stepped in when Josh probably wanted some time to breathe. Josh was, having these deep conversations with Drake throughout the episode, and then whenever it would cut to these ad reads, it was typically Ben doing the voiceover. So
that's right.
He did step up to the plate then, and I commend him for that.
I appreciate that.
So I'm going to go B-. I'll leave it at that.
Hell, I'll even give him a B flat.
Okay.
B flat. I think maybe that's something we could agree on.
We just leapfrogged each other. Hell, I'll do B. Ben, you get a B.
Now, around a minute 48 in is a monumental reveal. This is where we see the Mountain Valley cap.
You did it?
And Super Chris.
Okay.
The bottle cap.
Yeah. So
because in the beginning we
Josh's
just see the open water bottle that Josh is sipping out of. We don't see the bottle cap.
Yeah.
Had no idea where that was. Now we could place it in time.
Yeah. I thought maybe he had slipped it into his pocket, but no,
I thought he maybe threw it out right after opening it up.
See, I don't take him as the guy who would do that, but this cap was just out there on the wide open table next to the bottle, but you don't see it until it's in the wide shot.
That's right, but it also struck me as such an interesting character building, detail, because if he didn't have the cap, then I would have said, oh, this guy really lives in the present. He's maybe just kind of running and gunning through life, flying by the seat of his pants.
Yeah.
I'm just going to finish this. When I finish it, I'll toss it out. He had the cap with him as a sort of like I want to be a little prepared.
Yeah.
I want to, put money in a rainy day fund just in case. He's like, what if I drink it now? Now I'm full. I'm not thirsty anymore. I want to have that cap.
Yeah. It's like a Roth IRA, which they do an ad for with Robinhood Gold later on. But we're putting the cart before the horse. In this wide shot, we do also get the reveal of all of these Spritz boxes. Spritz Society, they never do a direct reference to these drinks, but there's 5 packages of them laid out against the wall at the end of the table. There's 2 cans bookending these 5 closed cases. And I do wonder what was up with that. I assume that maybe this is a spritz that Josh and Ben have been working on. They've cooked up some recipe and they're excited to see it on the shelves and they're trying to do some subtle promotion for it. I think a direct reference to it would have really helped their branding and marketing, but we didn't get that this episode at least.
Well, there is a part 2. Now, the Dear Media sign, I'm going to have to dock the production a point here because that is not centered.
Yeah. Well, the whole frame.
If anything, the camera isn't centered in the room.
Yeah.
We have to just nudge it over even maybe, 6 inches to a foot.
Yeah, they went a bit long on Drake's side of the table.
Far too much negative space.
Yeah, Josh is a bit more tucked into his side. And yeah, if we could straighten the camera so that it's dead down the middle. If you want to refer to Alex Cooper's, call her daddy. I mean, she's mastered that. We ran that through simulations, wide frame.
Yeah.
And so
Wes Anderson was weeping when he saw that. Perfectly centered.
Yeah. So good guys, maybe take a page out of her book going forward. Maybe it's cleaned up in part 2. We'll see next week. But
what did you make of Josh's huge blow to Robert Altman and his legacy of MASH?
What's cool is it's a song.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of these things, it's a great 30 to 45 seconds,
Yeah.
but where does it go?
Yeah.
You don't hear the MASH theme and go like, God,
Yeah.
put that on. I can't wait for the bridge.
Yeah.
I was struck by that. They're talking about iconic theme songs, and Josh, gives it the stink eye. He says MASH doesn't really hold a candle to the Drake and Josh theme song. You don't really recognize MASH for its theme song, whereas Drake can go around the world singing this theme song, and people of all nationalities, creeds, and beliefs can sing together all the American English lyrics of the Drake and Josh theme song. And Robert Altman just doesn't have shit on that. And Josh called him out for that.
Masterful point, Peter. Now the boys move on to talk about Drake's beef, if you want to call it that, with Justin Bieber. He retweeted a photo on Twitter now, known as X.
Yeah, the everything app.
Of an AI-generated picture of Justin Bieber.
Are you and Justin Bieber cool? People are asking.
I don't even know. I've met him one time. I never.
You guys had a little Twitter beef back in the day?
Well, it wasn't even like with him. I just tweeted like some like stupid like tweet that was like somebody tweeted a picture of him like AI'd with like makeup on.
I don't know who he's following, who would have,
But what are the facts here? He sees the photo
Yeah.
of Justin Bieber, just AI photo.
Yeah.
He retweets it.
Yeah.
Now then believers start going after his ass, biting at his heels. They're trying to knock him down a few pegs.
They're trying to tear him a new one.
And it was all of a sudden, it was like, kill yourself, die. You're everything you've ever made is trash. Drake and Josh is trash. Like this and that. And I was like, it literally went from waking up one day to being like, Drake Josh, the greatest show ever. We love it. And then the next day was like, everything you've ever made should burn, and we're gonna make sure it does. It was like the Beatles, like outside, like burning our, like like I said that we were bigger than Jesus or something,
So he's kind of been dethroned now.
Yeah.
From this,
From the believers, yes.
which he didn't think it was a big deal just retweeting this picture of Bieber, but it certainly was. Now, ultimately, it escalated to the point where at Drake's birthday, he was saying...
Yeah, his birthday at Rick Caruso's The Grove here in Los Angeles. Now, one of Justin Bieber's lackeys, Kyle Massey, apparently came up first to Drake as Drake's like ascending some staircase and is trying to get Drake's attention. Drake's like, no, not now, not now. But Kyle's like, no, dude, like Justin Bieber's on the way. He's playing a bit of a Paul Revere character.
And he's like, no, bro, I need to talk to you now. It's really important. And I was like, are you on, like, what is going, like, you're acting so weird. Like, I'm like, I'll talk to you after.
Yeah.
Well, after his bus rolled up, I was like, oh, Kyle was like, yo, homie, Justin's on his way here right now. Like,
Chill
I think
out.
he was giving me the wanting to give me like the warning.
Warning Drake that there might be hell to pay for his retweeting and further, conflagration with Justin Bieber's fan base, where Drake was really kind of fanning the flames, and I guess this was all escalating to a blowout at Drake's event. And so Justin Bieber shows up, and there's a bit of awkward air and tension, but they end up coming to terms. Drake kind of he backtracks a bit. He's like, "Look, I didn't realize. I had no idea you were going to see that. I didn't realize like anyone's paying attention to what I'm doing online." And Justin Bieber understood. They're on good terms now, and it was just kind of an awkward thing. And Drake knew that he has to be more careful online from then on out.
It wasn't really. I really had a problem with Justin Bieber. Who cares? He's actually a really great artist.
Well, for whom the Drake bell tweets. We get hit with I think the first time the autofocus becomes an issue. This is around 11 minutes, 20 seconds.
Because remember, we played at the album release, and so I was like,
so we have this kind of popping in, popping out effect. It seems to me like there's probably not someone manning this wide angle.
No.
Because if there were, there's no reason it should be on autofocus popping around like that. It should be manual, aperture set, lighting. It should be all okayed with the gaffer. Maybe they were trying to save a couple bucks.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, with a podcast, it's a bunch of people sitting around. We're not really moving.
Yeah.
So we can have the camera on autofocus. And that's just a dangerous ideology.
Because with a dynamic conversation, people are going to be, waving their hands, making all kinds of gestures and getting close to the camera and then back with their hands. And you just you can't let these cameras run rampant. You got to have.
And they were disastrous this entire episode. I'm just going to throw out some time frames and we're going to put it on the screen.
Yeah.
12:03. 21:35.
That was a gnarly one.
There was 13:30, around 14 minutes, 9 seconds, 57 minutes, 40 seconds, and 58 minutes, 30 seconds. Look at that thing. It's like you can feel the heartbeat visually.
Yeah, I wanted to cue up Dark Side of the Moon and play it backwards and see if it synced up with the heartbeats and the visual aberrations.
It just might. But, we get into our first ad for the show. It's the Galaxy S25 Ultra phone ad, which has, 100 times zoom.
All right. So, Benjamin, tell me this, right? The other day, you were at a sporting event. Did you use the 100x zoom on your Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra? Trick question. I know you did.
Of course I use my 100x zoom.
This is the only visual ad, right? Like we see them in the room talking about. The other ads are just, it's a, photo on screen.
Yeah.
And we just hear the audio of their read. But for this one,
it's Josh and Ben in different clothing from the main episode. And they have different mic flags this time. This time, Josh has a DM Media mic flag, and Ben has the outdated Good Guys one.
So this is clearly a wild take.
Yeah.
And, what else is Josh's hat is blurred.
Yes.
So, this should be an easily avoidable thing. When you're doing an ad read for a company, don't wear like an Apple hat. That's probably what he had on.
Yeah. And I think a tip is to wear as few clothes as possible. Like, you don't want too many accessories because
that's
it really
where you want the show blacks. That's where you want to just have, very plain.
Yeah, because you don't want competitors visible in the shot as you're talking about Samsung.
But then after this, we go into a Robinhood ads insert, which is, this isn't visual, it's just the audio.
Yeah.
And, throughout the show, we'll get into more ads. But my question is, with all this money coming in from sponsors, why is the autofocus such an issue? Has it always been like this for the entirety of the show? Because you'd have to imagine if their coffers are as full as I think they are, then they should be able to pay a second AC, a respectable day rate, and B, get state-of-the-art camera equipment. You should be shooting this podcast on like an RE or a Red or something.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly owe it to ourselves to dive into this back catalog and check out for more instances of this happening, because, they might have a storied and troubled past with the camera difficulties, but just going off this episode alone, it was certainly distracting. And I know that when we come back from the ad breaks, that there's a moment on Ben where there's just an extreme visual aberration on like the backdrop behind him.
You weren't always...
That could have been a Kodak issue as well in the post-production.
Yeah, I do wonder if that was a post issue that some editor should have had a keen eye on as they were exporting. I mean, you always want to watch back the export because that's what's going to make it to the public.
And the thing is, even if you're having these issues on site when you're recording it, obviously, you have Drake fly in from wherever and you're not going to be able to re-record. So you just have that visual footage. I mean, we're basically doing consultation for free at this point. But, just really quickly, you're going to have to take that to a post house.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to be paying 3 times the amount to get it fixed than
Easily.
it would have just cost to get a camera and shoot the wide shot the right way. Alternatively, if you didn't have the budget for that, just don't cut to the wide shot. If we have 3 amazing solo shots, well, maybe 2.
Yeah.
With Ben's, that is troubling.
It certainly is.
But we could just do a round robin of cutting. I don't know how many times we actually have to go to the wide, so that is something to consider in the future. I just think for the team.
Yeah. Certainly for the future. And
sorry, that was just my spiel. Now, we can move on. I just don't want to have the autofocus drag us down this entire episode.
Yeah, of course not. And so we get into the meat of the conversation, which is about Drake and Josh's experiences on set and some of the tragedy that Drake endured as a child actor. He opens up pretty candidly about some of the things he experienced at the hands of the adults that were trusted to keep him safe and help build him up as a budding actor. And, he was tragically let down.
Like the Amanda show, where the dude was, where the abuse was happening.
Yes.
The worst part about it being that was my having the monster in your own in your safe place. It's like that's the only place I feel comfortable is when I get to set and hang out with you guys and we go goof around and put on our masks and wigs and makeup and make people laugh and slide around and get dirty. Like that's where I feel safe.
It's heartbreaking seeing someone who endured stuff like this have to relive it a bit. But Josh is there by his side and they have plenty of good moments to look back on too. And Drake wants that to be known that look, if you were thinking of never watching Drake and Josh again because of what you may now know about his experiences, he doesn't want that to be the case.
I had a lot of people reaching out oh, don't worry, Drake, we'll never watch the show ever again.
Yeah.
Oh, now watching the show, it's so hard to know what you were going through while you were making this. And I'm like, whoa, no. Dude, when lights, camera, action, and I walk in and Josh is wearing a dress, that's when I'm...
He thinks, Drake and Josh, every time he was on set with Josh and the other actors, he really was having a blast and has so many fond memories. And
I think that's what makes it so complicated and gray is that when he was on set riffing with Josh, that was his safe space.
Yeah.
And then you had this kind of monster guy that was, I don't know, dialogue coach or something that was just always on set.
Yeah.
And, preying upon Drake. And it's just that was, those interactions made Drake feel as if it was his secret, that he couldn't really go to anyone with it.
Yeah. And he says set was his happy place.
Yeah. And then you had the monster there.
Yeah, he was sure he came from his parents were great for him, but they were divorced and he was a child of divorce.
My house isn't where I feel safe.
Yeah.
At home. I mean, I did. I mean, I didn't have abusive parents or anything. I had a difficult, divorced parents, whatever. But still, where I felt most comfortable, where I was the happiest, was when I was on set with you guys.
And so set and work with peers was truly his happy place, and so he was just troubled by the fact that there's this monster getting in the way of it. And he also they talk about how he and Josh bonded. They first met on the Amanda show, and Josh came on as a secondary player. I think Drake and Amanda were kind of running the show then. And Josh came in and, blew them away, was consistently funny. He was the outsider and was still able to stun them. And
he came in as the Richard Pryor to Drake's Gene Wilder.
Yeah, that was captivating. I mean, Drake talks about they both talk about how they were both pulled together by the fact that they bonded over, buddy comedies and just old school comedy.
Drake said some of his biggest influences were, Abbott and Costello, Steve Martin and John Candy, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis.
Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor.
For some reason, I was always attracted to buddy comedies growing up. Even stuff like, I would even call like Lucy and Ricky, like Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, like that's a buddy comedy team. That's just the type of comedy that I loved was the straight man, funny man, the setup, the put down, the boom, 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 just that. I was always into that type of comedy. But who's gonna be like my Jerry Lewis, or who's gonna be my guy? Like I need somebody else. I'm like, I'm doing this thing with Amanda. That's cool, but like, no, I need like my partner.
Yeah.
Like my Steve Martin and my John Candy. I need the.
Why are they all chubby?
Well, not all of them.
He always wanted that kind of buddy comedy situation, and you need a partner for that, and you need someone you can trust.
Yeah.
You need a good friend. You need someone that you can backboard off of, and I think they were an incredible dynamic. Constantly flipping. One of them would be the straight man, the other one outrageous. They had that experience together, which they were sharing, which also makes all this stuff so tragic. In that Drake thought when he came forward, oh, I'm going to be ruining this amazing thing we share.
Yeah.
Josh is going to lose this opportunity of this incredible thing we were building, and it's all going to be my fault.
Yeah.
That's how he felt. I mean, he was,
came forward.
what, 14 or 15 years old?
Now I'm entering the Drake and Josh phase where we should be like, bro, like partners. Like, this is our time. Like, let's be in this together. But I came back to the same stage.
Yeah.
The same parking lot, the same dressing rooms, the same green room, the same makeup rooms, the same. It's like
Everything's triggering.
yes. So now, and in the back of my head, the whole time I'm working with doing the pilot, I know that there's this investigation happening. I know that this guy's about to get arrested. I know that shit's about to hit the fan, and nobody in here knows it.
Yeah.
And I'm 14 or 15, and I'm like, got this whole production, this whole crew. He shows up one day, strolling onto set, walking around, everyone's talking, and I'm sitting there going, none of you have any idea what is in process right now and what's about to happen.
And yeah, it's heartbreaking. And you see the moments of joy from his childhood where like they recounted this sketch that they did on the Amanda Show together called Tony Pajamas. It was inspired by The Sopranos almost, where they're reading a bedtime story as kind of like mob characters. And they kind of do a live table read of this script. I mean, they have this stuff committed to memory. And so that's a nice moment. And yeah, it's clear that they had a special bond together as actors, and that hasn't really gone away. I mean, they clearly spent time apart after the show. They went their separate ways, but it's great seeing them back together.
Like, we're babysitting Amanda, and she goes, I want to hear a story. And I go, she wants to hear about a story.
Oh, you want to hear a story? I got a story. All right, so you got this. There's this guy, right? He's driving his bike, and he falls off, and his kickstand goes right through his leg.
Right through his leg.
Yeah, there was blood and guts everywhere.
Everywhere.
And she's like, yeah, you're talking, yeah. And so she's like, and then she's like, I don't like this story.
She don't like the story.
I got
Hey,
ears.
he's got ears.
So, and then I smack him in the back of the head.
This is crazy. Oh my God.
The chemistry is still there. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy to think what started as, I don't know, this ad hoc kind of like little troupe with the Amanda Show has, it beautifully evolved into, this show in which Drake could pursue not only the buddy comedy, but also his musical career.
Yeah, I mean, their dynamic is truly one to marvel at. Drake, he talks about that. I think this is in relation to the Tony Pajamas sketch where Josh made him laugh out loud, break on camera. And he said, usually he refers to the Harvey Korman, Jimmy Fallon breaking character, spectrum. And he says, I fall typically more on the Harvey Korman side.
I'm a kind of a Harvey Korman sometimes, all right? I'm not so much of a Jimmy Fallon, but I'll break sometimes.
Rather than Jimmy Fallon. But this was a moment Josh got him to crack, and he started laughing like Jimmy Fallon, broke character. And yeah, it was interesting where it's like they were constantly kind of pushing each other to the limits. doing things that weren't necessarily funny, but doing it in their own ways to make each other laugh and deliver lines in the funniest ways possible that might not have been funny on paper, but truly translated to hilarity on screen.
But it should be noted that when they were filming all of this, right, having all this fun, Josh wasn't privy to what was going on, behind the scenes. No. And it was, only later until, Drake had to contact the police with his mom. And then, that guy, Brian, got ousted. He went to jail for 16 months.
Yeah.
He was 16 months.
He got back on the scene after getting out of jail and, worked in the industry up until 2019.
This was not covered in the podcast. We did a little bit of research.
Yeah. This guy, certified monster, he got out of jail, somehow got letters of recommendation to work on Sweet Life of Zach and Cody. He was doing voiceover work or something like that. And then was canned after Disney did a little more research on him.
Which I don't know why none of this was apparent before.
Yeah.
It was really heart-wrenching hearing Drake having to go to court, testify against this guy, Brian. He was there with his mom.
When we went to court, the entire side of his courtroom was full of people who I thought were my friends and people who I looked up to, people whose careers I would like mine to be one day. And I'm on the side with Robert and Roy, and I think it was me and my mom.
Imagine being 14, 15, and now you think, oh wait, am I just imagining all this? Am I just making it? And it's you're gaslighting yourself. And
yeah, it's really tough. And Josh really wasn't privy to any of this kind of thing until it was a while after, in the wake of everything kind of subsiding, that at one point Josh was in the car with Drake, and Josh asked if he still stayed in touch with Brian at all, and Drake said no, Brian's a bad guy. And that's kind of all it took for Josh to realize that there was probably something deeper there, that there's more to the story. But he took Drake's word for it and knew not to really press any further, and kind of just got the sixth sense of Drake's been dealing with a lot. And so, it wasn't clear in the moment, and it's all been coming to light all the more recently, but it was nice to know too that I guess they'd caught up for lunch, Drake and Josh, a week before recording the podcast too, just to, clear some more air and really set the stage for the podcast recording that we all got to listen to. And then they get into more discussion of just growing up together, the time they spent together in their teens, when they were good friends and co-stars. And, there were times where Josh would join Drake's family in Orange County, go to church comedy, Christian comedy.
Josh was a big fan of stand-up.
Yeah.
Drake was kind of getting into it, and they shared a lot of laughs together.
Yeah, now both of them make it clear that neither of them are into Christian comedy. It's just that Drake's mom is a Christian and would bring them to these, Christian comedy shows. But Drake concedes that there is a really funny Christian meme that he's seen that riffs on Drake and Josh, where it's Josh asking Drake, "Where's the body of Christ?" It's a riff on their episode where, they're trapped in a treehouse and Drake forgot to install a door on it, so they're trapped. It's a classic meme, and they're all laughing about it. They all agree that this is an incredible Christian meme, but Ben makes it clear that, look, you don't have to keep going on about Christian comedy. This is the most Jewish podcast.
I don't know if you know, you're on the most Jewish podcast in America.
And I do want to take a moment to fact check that claim, because there are many Jewish-oriented podcasts out there. I know that Good Guys, from their theme song, that both Josh and Ben are Jewish themselves, but they don't really orient the podcast around Judaism itself. There are podcasts that do that, such as Being Jewish with Jonah Platt. That's just one of many examples.
Well, Josh and Ben are obviously credentialed.
Well, yeah,
there's no questions there.
Of course.
But unless this podcast pivots into, weekly deep dives on Judaism, I think it's a little bit of a reach to say they are the most Jewish podcast.
Yeah. We just wanted to offer up that fact check.
Ultimately, Josh took a quick break with the Home Chef and then bookingads.com break.
This episode of the Good Guys podcast is brought to you by our friends at Home Chef. Meal kits often market themselves as an easy meal prep solution, but often disappoint with complicated, overlong recipes that aren't worth the effort. This episode of the Good Guys podcast is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. Every time I use Booking.com to find a place to stay in the U.S., I know they'll have exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah, Ben did a great job doing the voiceover on both of these, made both products and services seem absolutely incredible.
Ben really held down the fort here, and I'm proud of him for that. And that's why he earned that B.
Yeah, I do wish this was maybe more video forward. I'm
going to take what we can get here, right?
I'm not a fan of the ad graphics. It just does feel like not as much effort was put in as could have been.
But maybe the advertisement companies didn't pay enough.
It's possible, but again, any kind of ad work you're doing, you want to put your best foot forward. And
this is a medium that should be for the sponsors.
Yeah.
For the ads. Podcasting is such an incredible industry because it's so dominated by advertisements, which keep this industry afloat.
Yeah, so let's get some motion, some animation, some live action in there.
We got to be able to service Blue Apron a little bit better than this, is what you're saying.
Yeah, Home Chef at least.
That's right. But coming out of the ad break, I was a little concerned around 41 minutes and 51 seconds with the breath. The on-mic breath. Let's play this right now.
Comedy night, and we have your mom's...
What was that?
That was jarring. I don't know.
Sounded like Mount Vesuvius erupting.
Now, we know that Josh is in frame. He's talking. It's likely not his breath.
Looks like we're playing a game of Murder on the Orient Express right now, trying to figure out who made that noise.
It's either Drake or Ben, or Olivia, who we get to in the next segment.
Okay.
Seems to be a producer, totally off screen, no camera on her. She has a small speaking role in this podcast.
And so I just my heart goes out because I can't imagine losing those formative years or, being given such responsibility and pressure at that age when you are just beginning to figure out bits and pieces of who you are and how you interact with other people. And it just seems like the marketing of it all was a lie.
Well, that's...
So it could have been her breath because she has a live mic. But yeah, that breath was certainly, it caught me off guard. And then we get into just more conversation about Drake and Josh's time together as teens. Josh is trying to be nice about Drake's mom's cooking. About she would make chicken enchiladas all the time, and Drake's like, come on, you don't have to be nice. Look, she grew up poor, doesn't have much of a cooking background. You can just say the enchiladas weren't good. And Josh is like, look, we'll cut this part. We don't want to be bad mouthing Drake's mom on this podcast.
All right, maybe it's not because she's just poor. She's just a bad kid.
We're cutting that out. Robin, I'm cutting that out for you.
Thank God she married Roy.
I will not let your enchiladas get dragged.
And, we have the glimpse into the other room right behind Josh where
that's right.
You don't see anything happening on that computer screen. You don't see any cuts being made, and it made it into the final export.
So does this confirm my theory, though, that maybe this is just a security camera?
It's possible.
Someone working a night shift just making sure the studio is safe and sound?
Yeah. So, but again, look, if a host is saying we're going to cut something,
I believe them.
Whoever's getting their hands on the footage, you should be cutting that. That's a note to the editor.
Yeah, we got to clean up the post-production just a little bit next time. Hopefully part 2, lot cleaner. But, Drake recounted some more of his experience and was actually just kind of talking about how, when he was 14, 15, he almost compared it to, when you're with your older brother.
And so when you had tyrannical bosses or just people acting inappropriately, I think the assumption was in Hollywood, this was just kind of part of it. And allowed.
Also, I think that it's like when you're hanging out with your older brothers and, they're talking about, the girls and they're talking about this. You're like, yeah, I'm going to join in and talk because you want to be part of that. And we have that same feeling when we're our age on a set.
Drake being on set as a 14-year-old, there's not 24/7 adult supervision. So there's times, he's with these absolute predators that are doing God knows what. And, they're just preying on the fact that it's children don't have unions.
Yeah.
Children, these child actors should be in the hands of people that want to protect them.
Yeah.
I want to see them grow, have fun, flourish. And unfortunately, as we're seeing in so much of entertainment, that hasn't been the case for a long.
There aren't those guardrails.
No.
And yeah, so many children fall prey to people who take advantage of them. I mean, they're easily impressionable. They won't really know how to speak up when wrong and evil is done to them.
Right.
And yeah, it's heartbreaking to see and learn about down the line, years after it actually happened.
How long that lingers, the guilt, all the feelings of just being messed up. I mean, several times in this, Drake can't really totally recall his memories.
Yeah.
It's like this black box of just like this horrible.
He's had to repress. And yeah, it just makes you wonder. Like that was in the era and the format of TV, the golden age of children's television. And now it's like we're entering the golden era of children's podcasting. You know, we've covered previously the MD Foodie Boys and their explorations into cuisine and everything they talk about on their show. And you know, they're just entering the game. They're maybe the vanguard of children podcasting at the moment.
They're certainly pioneering it.
And you just have to hope that as this new medium and format emerges, where children are also being trusted with this work, that they're being protected.
That's right.
You know, seeing that they're, you know, teaming up with Dave Portnoy and other idols in the media sphere, it does give me hope.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is nothing but a role model. And I think the entire assortment of figures at Barstool should be looked up to, should be trusted. I mean, the thing is, podcasting is a clean slate, right? A new form of entertainment where we're seeing more kids come in, you know, like star podcasters, right?
Yeah.
And they're getting all this attention. They're getting all this fame. And we have to think about, as fans, as people that are only one comment away, we need to be doing our best to say, how can we safeguard them?
Yeah.
How can we make sure that, you know, they're having an experience that children should be having with these mediums, that they shouldn't be taken advantage of. They should have adult supervision.
Yeah.
It's tricky because it's like with the Foodie Boys, you'd almost think, I don't want to have like a teacher or some adult in there that would maybe kill the vibe, because they have such a cool flow,
of course,
to them. And that might almost feel a little bit lame to kids. But ultimately, looking ahead in this kaleidoscopic entertainment industry of what's been so fragmented from, you know, our shared institutions of like these production companies that we've seen have so screwed up and have so abused.
Nickelodeon, Disney.
They've destroyed trust in the public. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now it's like up to the little guys to all branch out and build their own platforms and ecosystems. And you just have to hope that the children who, you know, are brought into these ecosystems and given their own, that they're also supported and cared for and able to grow and mature at a normal rate and come into the world on their own terms. And
podcasting should be a safe space.
Yeah.
Anywhere. Podcasting, it's people talking on couches. It's a beautiful, beautiful way to convey information, thoughts, feelings, shared emotions. So, you know, let's make sure this is right. I want to be vigilant with Foodie Boys, any other, you know, kids on podcasts, right?
Yeah. I do want to note that at around 50 minutes, we do see Drake's mic flag now visible in Josh's frame. Whenever it cuts to Josh as Drake is like talking, you can kind of see Drake's flag in the bottom right, and it just he's starting to encroach on Josh's turf, which, you know, we'll let it slide.
That's fine by me.
We'll let it slide, but it's just something to note. Keep your eyes out for that when you watch the episode, if you haven't already. I mean, definitely go check it out.
Now, I know sometimes you just want to be able to vent about this kind of stuff and have me here to support you and listen to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to be pragmatic at the end of the day. I just want to offer a quick solution to the camera operator. Let's just pan that camera just a little bit to the left. We can cut it out, or to the editor if it's too late. Just punch in. Guys, we're shooting on 4K. You can punch in 4 times and you're not going to lose resolution because you are, what are you exporting this at? Right?
Yeah.
I'm ultimately watching this 1080p on our
YouTube.
TV. So I don't know. We're not going to lose that much resolution. And it doesn't even have to be a 4x jump. I mean, you could just go a little bit, right? If not, we're gonna have to start shooting with the the Galaxy S25 Ultras, right? 100 times zoom.
Yeah, those things seem impressive.
You could be shooting from the next skyscraper over in Dumbo Heights, right?
Yeah, and speaking of that ad, we actually get into more ad reads featuring Nutrafol and...
Oh, hold on a sec. I don't want to let the editor off too easy. I mean, around an hour, 2 minutes, 17 seconds, there was an insane jump cut. Okay, Drake's talking about Seinfeld, and then it just, shoots in. It's the most jarring cut I've ever seen.
This is like Seinfeld. I was like, this is really good. I'm like, our timing? I'm like, there was like some things that you had said.
Oh, I'm sorry to yuck your yum. I mean, I have this noted as well, but that you're jumping ahead here. I'm back at the ad read with Nutrafol and Caraway, which is probably about 10 minutes before that. If I had to hazard a guess. Ben kills it again with additional VO work on both of these ad reads.
This episode of the Good Guys podcast is brought to you by our friends at Nutrafol. First and foremost, folks, we're in our 30s. It is what it is. We're going to start to see a little bit of shedding. This episode of the Good Guys podcast is brought to you by Caraway. Folks, in the Safra household, we absolutely love Caraway.
Again, just still graphics. You see Josh and Ben, buddy cop kind of arms crossed, backs to each other, posed off to the left of the screen, and then you see the ad insert on the right side. You see taxi kind of logoing at the bottom, and then a silhouette of the New York skyscraper drawn out, or New York skyline drawn out underneath the ad insert too. We see that on both Nutrafol, Caraway. Great insert again. We get back into the show. We're talking about, what were Ben and Olivia, who I mentioned earlier, what were their impressions of the show, watching it, since they were both fans growing up. And, Ben, he tells something of a parable akin to Plato's cave. I mean, he had no idea as a child watching Drake and Josh that these were like kids on set in character, that they have... He didn't realize that they had rich lives.
It never, ever at all clicked until I watched the documentary and learned about what it's like Drake, as you mentioned, like this idea that you're not an adult, but you're being treated like an adult, and you're with adults, having to be on set and never being able to take days off, and just like, again, I'm at home and I'm eating a pudding and I'm watching Drake and Josh with my dad, and you guys are like working. It's just, it's mind blowing.
It was the same thing Drake probably felt when he came across that AI photo of Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
It's just, you see it, it hits you at first glance what you think it is, but then if you dig down on a deeper level, it's going to be quite the awakening, right?
Yeah. And so Ben's head was spinning when, he watched the documentary recently, Quiet on Set, and learned all this about Drake and Josh's interior lives. And, he saw the light at the end of the cave and saw that there is a whole world out there and not just what's on TV in front of him. And, Olivia shared that it was a great show for her growing up. So many fond memories watching it.
Well, and because also it's that duality of this was something that's so glamorized, being, a Nickelodeon kid, like a child actor.
Yeah.
And that lifestyle, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, I wish I could be Drake and Josh, whatever. But then it's kind of that horror of what Drake, what they had to endure.
Yeah.
The kind of people that were allowed.
Yeah.
These people were allowed and paid money to be on set.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of environment that children, actual kids, had to be around. And it's just that dichotomy that I think Ben was really grappling with in that moment.
Yeah, and it certainly reminds me, it kind of echoes the Ursula Le Guin story, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas, in which, it's the story of a utopian society, but once you get into the heart of it, you realize that the society is like fueled and running on the perpetual torture of a single child. And so it's just kind of the question of like, at what cost is all this grandeur and glamour, acceptable?
Well, and then not only that, but as Drake was saying before, where, his friends are like, oh, now that I know what happened, I'm never going to watch the show again.
Yeah.
And he said, like, look, we can't let, just a couple of demons actually take away from all the time, the energy, the, the amazing memories of working with Josh, everything that made it so special and created a fan base. I mean, we have to hang on to that stuff while, expelling
Yeah.
all that, the evil that was surrounding those people on set, right?
Yeah. And at 59 minutes, there's something of a bouncing camera on Josh.
You know what the show means to everyone. You know that the moments that were great, and we were incredibly lucky to get to do this thing that we loved. But there's also the truth of everything you went through and everything that was just an experience for a kid that was unacceptable in so many ways. And you rest.
I don't know if there was someone helming the tripod or the camera that was on him, but there was certainly like something of a bouncing effect on this certain shot of him.
Did they have the tripod on a trampoline or something? Or?
You have to wonder. And then, we get into a bit of conversation where Drake is opening up about how he's a natural fan. He's a born and bred fan of different people. Like, he's not afraid to tell people he idolizes that, how much they mean to him. And he said that when he was young, he ran into Dick Van Dyke outside some appearance and went up to him, and Dick was just so gracious and willing to talk to him and about the Dick Van Dyke show. And it seemed like Dick was super happy to see a young fan and talk to him and, accept his support and show how much he appreciated Drake's support. And Josh kind of undercuts this moment.
But he stopped and had that moment with me, and I was like,
because he's used to his
I wanna
fans
be that
being
guy.
50.
yeah. He's like, what? You like me?
He's like, I haven't gotten this much love since the last ARP convention.
Yeah.
Now, I take it that Josh meant AARP, which is typically what you refer to that program as. But ARP, I just want to call that out, Josh, going forward. It's typically AARP. That's the only time I've ever really heard that pronounced.
Well, when you're helming a podcast this big, you're going to have to take responsibility for what you say and do. It might be a tough pill to swallow, but ultimately, I think this will help Josh grow.
Yeah, all I want is for the podcasters we companion to grow in their craft. And hell, anyone's welcome to take shots at us too. We're not perfect either, but we're just having fun and, trying to better this industry. And as the conversation progresses, both of them get a bit teary-eyed as they talk about kind of the magic of working on the show and together and just the fond memories they have.
Am I tearing up right now?
I know, I am too kind of.
This is... Oh, but it's like, that's the kind of things where like, it would be like, whoa, just take it easy, man, right? Like that's not a joke in the script, but we just picked up on these little things, and we would do these little things, that were like, it just made us us, and like made it what, I don't know, it just gave it that special thing,
No, it was very special, and it was, you can't recreate it.
We get hit with a to be continued screen. A reminder that this is a grand 2-part podcasting event. You don't want to miss the second part. We won't be missing it. You don't want to miss our companion episode to the second part coming out next week. But yeah, it's to be continued. And then we go into an end screen.
Right. There's a little bit of contention for me at that end because they had the handles of the show, which their at for Good Guys was their Instagram handle. But then for TikTok, it was Good Guys Podcast.
Yeah.
So at that rate, could they not get the handle for just Good Guys on TikTok? Or at that rate, can we go in and change the Instagram to Good Guys Podcast?
Yeah, it's easier for everyone if there's some continuity across all the platforms. And we run into this issue again just below that, where they have this segment for the Dear Media social media handles. The Dear Media Studios, it's at Dear Media Studios on YouTube and Instagram, but just at Dear Media on TikTok. So it's a bit of a flip-flop between the Good Guys, where it was abbreviated on Instagram, Good Guys was, but it's the abbreviated name for Dear Media on TikTok. So just something to look out for.
Look, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I don't know what to say. I mean, maybe they could, change those handles, have it be a little easier to digest their presence on social media. But ultimately, look, this was a podcast that went, we've had our eye on Josh for a while as a podcast host. And when we saw a 2-part podcast event, we thought
Josh and Ben. Let's make that clear. Ben is the podcasting guru, I think.
Of course.
Duo. I mean, Josh certainly lends his acting abilities, and
he was incredible in Oppenheimer. But I just want to say, usually we don't cover stuff as serious as this. So I hope we did a good job. I hope it was okay to listen to. Obviously, we're welcome to any feedback and critique as well to help our show grow.
Of course.
We're going to be looking to cover this next week.
Yeah.
And I hope there were a lot of good takeaways in watching this and just saying, for us, podcasting is our bread and butter. This is an industry that we take pride in, covering, being a part of this community.
Yeah.
And, there is that quote, you can judge the health of a nation by the way they treat their children.
Yeah.
And that's going to be especially important with podcasting.
Yeah, it's just you want to support the victims and do what you can to pave a better future for everyone else. And yeah, I want to thank everyone for listening to our podcast, our episode companioning their podcast. And we appreciate you checking in every week, and we're so glad to have you listening. And look, thank you to Drake for opening up on this episode, and thank you to Josh for hosting him.
And look, thank you to Ben from wherever he zoomed in from.
Yeah.
And I also want to say thank you to that security guard who was working on the monitor, making sure everyone was safe.
Yeah.
And guys, stay tuned for next week. We're going to be hitting a part 2. And then after that, we're always open ears for if you have a podcast you'd like to see us cover. Eventually, maybe we could cover stuff outside of podcasting, but for now, there's a lot of creators we have our eyes on.
A lot to see and unpack, and so many of these creators are uploading weekly, it's impossible to stay on top of. So we're kind of just skimming the surface of so many shows, and if there's any show that you want us to tune into, we will be sure to do that. So thank you again for listening. We hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.